so efficient. We've got to keep in mind the cold factor. And
We're efficient, they're inefficient.
They're inefficient.
We
so what are things that you want to do right away when they come out here? Because you guys are all really experienced. Gloves, hats, snow scarves sticking out. Boots on the right feet. Huge heels.
Look at the boots and the thing that's hidden. When I started teaching, we had stretch pants. It was easy to tell if the boot was not buckled tight. Sometimes now you got to get them pull up and make sure the jeans aren't inside the pants.
Sure.
You know, that's because that really messes everything up.
I always feel like pressure points. The overall assessment on clothing and
The thing that we have to think about as ski instructors, so we need to get these people all in a balanced position. So good balanced position would be a slight flex in your ankle, right? A slight flex in your knee, a slight flex at the waist with the hands out in front of us. And I kind of like to think about having like an imaginary triangle from this hand to my belly button to this one, and always in my peripheral vision. So if we can get the people in this position to start with, so whether you've got a lot of tools in your toolbox, what would you do to get in that position?
Well, I like to start where they just say, you're standing in these boots, what do you feel? These boots making you bend your knees and ankles a little bit? Yeah, they are. Well, yeah, they're designed to do that, right? So you want to stand here comfortably, and you want your shin to contact the front of your boot. You want that to happen. Right?
And people come kind of the sport, they don't have judgments. They don't know yet what's good and what's not good. So you got to kind of like lead them to, all right, so when I feel my shins against the front of my boots, that's the driver's seat. That means I'm in control. When I feel my calves against the back of my boots, that means I'm the passenger. I'm in the back seat and I'm not in control. So now you've created a value system a little bit. Forward's good, back is bad. You know, without saying it per se, but you give that connotation, and they can explore that just by let's flex far enough forward to where we just feel our heels start to become light. Okay, that's just far enough where you can see those hands, and then if we go so far back that the toes become light, you know, like the dump truck backing up, beep beep beep. So you get them on the ball of the foot. That's where a ski is designed to take input, is through the toe piece and make the ski work.
On the easy button.
Yeah. We got little red stickers with easy on them. We put them on students' toe pieces and said, push the easy button. Yeah, exactly. That's where it's from.
So as instructors, we know we're working on stance and balance here, right? So we've got a whole bunch of tricks. Roger just showed us one of them. What are other movements that we want to teach in the boots? Absolutely, we want to sidestep up the hill. So if we're going to sidestep up the hill, we're going to roll to the little toe side, right? So we're going to step, match, step, match, step, match, step, match. Other movements that we can work on are edging movements, tipping to the little toe side, or raising the arch of the foot. Raise the uphill foot, raise the downhill foot, raise the uphill foot, raise the downhill foot. Be really careful that you're looking around, that we don't have people locked together, we don't have people too far apart, so they're not able to make the movements. Those are things that we're looking for. And any kind of things, jumping up and down, bouncing, hands up, throwing your glove to introduce each other, catch it, you know, or kicking the ball. So then another thing that we want to really address is the order of movement. So if we're going to experience this sport, one of the things, if we're going to walk in a circle and I take a step, I usually step right to go right and left to go left. So you're going to see people putting their skis on and they're going to be going like this. So in our boot work, we want to make sure that we address right to go right. So let's just do a little walking exercise when we walk figure eight. So we can all get behind each other. And we're going to start going right, and I'm going to tap my right leg. I'm going to have my nice athletic stance. And what was that key word somebody said? You did shin, boot.
Oh, right, yes, yes.
So when you have your ankles flexed, you can feel the front.
Yes.
So key word, right?
Yeah.
Okay, left match, left match. Now I'm kind of on a little angle, so I'm tipping a little bit left match, left match, left match, left match, left ideally, this should be a little flatter, so we're going to make believe this is flat. We're going to change direction, and now we're going to go right. So I'm going to tap my right knee, right hand, right hand, right hand, Peripheral vision. And when I have kids and we have this perfect snow, well, there's 3 of them in this. Okay, so we got that order of movement kind of started, right? So we can, when we put the skis back on, we can do the same thing with the skis on. But the other thing we're going to do is kind of get them to experience the wedge. So we're standing here, we want to steer the tips of our skis in. So we can steer them in, we can stand here, we can jump them, come back, and we can slide the tails out. Or we can steer the tips in, we can step them out, we can hop them out, or we can guide the tails out. One of the things we want to be really careful is that we make sure we get that releasing movement going when we're teaching. So it's still, as we're in the wedge, you want to release that ski, you still roll to the little toe side. So that movement really isn't different. The movement that's different is the wedge versus the parallel.
One of the things about creating the wedge that has changed over the years, we used to do a lot of the push the tails out, spread the tails. We come around to recognizing that the tips are what lead us where we go in our skis. So we're trying to get the skier's orientation to what am I doing with the tips of my skis. So if we can get them to bring the tips in and the pivot points under the foot, yeah, the tails will go out, but we don't need to talk about the tails in that regard then, because then that can get complicated to pushing wider and wider, and then things get more and more difficult. But tips in, tips out, tips in, tips out. What happens? What keeps us? Let me ask this question: what keeps us going straight down the hill in a wedge? Why do we go straight when we're in a wedge? Even pressure on both skis. So if we go back a while, our traditional approach to a wedge turn was to create enough pressure on this ski to overpower this ski and force us around the corner. What if we, instead of creating more pressure here, we simply take the resistance away on this side, flatten the ski, and then tip, and get a turn. So that's what creates a spontaneous Christie, is releasing this edge and guiding that ski tip. If you look at parallel skiers and the world of intermediates that are in the almost sort of not quite but want to be parallel, that are stemming and stepping and doing all these things other than parallel release, it's all comes from it stems, no pun intended, from the fact that they haven't released this edge. They haven't released the old turn before they're trying to start the new one. So if we can, in a wedge, get them to think right to go right, we can start creating the releasing movements right from the very beginning that they need to become a parallel skier, whether they take a wedge pathway to it or a direct parallel pathway to it. It's the releasing movement that creates a parallel turn. Yep, exactly.
So with the kids, I used to say, let your other foot go along for the ride. And it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, just let it go, it's just going to go along for the ride.
Yeah, it will follow.
Yeah.
Okay, so other things that we can do is we can steer the tips out or make these little bow tie turns in the snow. And when you look at this, you want to make sure that they're using the ball of their foot to guide that ski. So that's, as we know, what movement is this? Yes, with the R, a rotary movement. Okay, without even telling you. So we wanted to address the bow tie or drifting the tips down the hill, or we know as instructors what the skill is.
And there's a stance cue there to look for. The kid's doing this versus stance on his heels. Okay? You'd rather see him doing this. Okay? But if we can make the bow tie, the pivot's right under the leg, that's kind of a bullshit.
Okay, so another thing, how do we get them from one place to the other? We sidestep up the hill, which we did. The other thing is we can do the duck walk up the hill. So inside, step.
Just rehearsing these in boots goes a long way to putting the skis on. Say, remember when we were in our boots and we walked up the hill like a duck? okay, now they've got something to draw on, as opposed to something they're on these skis and it's like, I don't know how to do anything.
Ducks walking into it. That's right.
And obviously, we're spending a lot of time on this.
Why did little ducks walk softly? They can't walk hard.
So obviously, we're spending a lot of time on this. You know, we need to get these people through this and get the skis on. It's a moving sport, an INT thing, and they want to get going. So we all have hundreds of exercises that we can do, and share them with everybody. If anybody's got something here that they do that really stands out, that people just dig it, so let's share it.
And some of these things with the flats, you might do a couple things on the flat, get some skis on, do something, and recognize, okay, here's a good point. If we step out of our skis and try this with just our boots, and then put our skis back on and try with our skis on, you can move. You know, it's like the one step back, 2 steps forward, instead of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. You know, so we can go back to boots at any point in time, or we can reinforce something or get something that they're not getting with that big long thing on their foot, which is, you know, got them just a little flummoxed. So. I like to. Any of you guys play baseball, tennis, golf? Any ping pong? Okay, do you eat with utensils?
Yeah.
Okay, so a fork is a tool you hold with your. A ski would be a tool you hold with your. Yes, your feet. Okay. So I don't ski by moving my head or wiggling my butt. I ski by doing what I want to do with my foot to get the ski to do what I want it to do. When they realize that I have to move my foot the way I want the ski to move. The ski is an extension of my foot. That's a real important concept in the ground. Oh, I've got to edge with my foot, or I have to twist or turn my foot, or I have to move to the front of my foot to get to the front of the ski. That's an important concept. And introducing the ski, I say, okay, look at the ski. What do you see when you look down it this way? See the shape and the side of the ski? See that shape? See that shape? See that shape? See that shape? That's what's built into the ski to help the ski turn when we put it on edge. All right. We also have the steel part of the ski, and we have the P-Tex part of the ski. Sometimes we're skiing the steel, but most of the time we want to be skiing the P-Tex. So I start to use P-Tex and steel as a reference to steel means get a little more edge. Get the P-Tex on the snow means get off the edge or flatten the ski. So they start to think, well, the bottom of the ski, I get the P-Tex, the black part on the snow. And that gives them a flat versus an edged perspective. Because most beginners get stuck in the two-edged version at some point in time. So getting them to understand how to flatten the ski, and that comes back to the tipping movements of the feet, is a good correlation.
Okay. Another thing I want to make sure that, and I'm sure you guys all do this, identify the brake on the ski, right? Part of the skier's responsibility code. Why do we have this brake on our ski? Because if our ski comes off, and it goes down the hill, we want to stop. So, and you guys all know, the tip, the tail, the bindings. Another thing that's really important is that you don't have snow on the bottom of your boot. Put the toe in the toe piece, step down so the brake release, and the heel will snap in. And then to release it, you press on the lever on the back of your binding.
I haven't seen that. That's awesome.
Okay, so just kind of push around forward, backward, forward. And one thing that I really like to do that I really think helps get that, what was one of the things that was key in the balanced stance that we knew we had it if we had Ching time. Got that. So if we just start sliding in a straight line, and a lot of times,
Again, we'd want to be ultra flat where we're doing this.
yeah, ultra flat. We're a little bit too steep here. But in kids, races, they love races because the faster you get going, the more forward you are, the more ankle flexion you have, and the position you're in to get a balanced stance.
Kids are good at solving the puzzle when you give them something to go after.
So pretending this is just flat line, let's just all just scoot forward. See if you can feel that. Okay, does everybody have their hands out? Are we giving good visual images for all our students?
I was waving at the people behind me. uphill on you with your students when you do that? Of course, you're typically...
We're pretending this is totally
We're
down there.
I like to do it uphill because then when we put two skis on, that becomes a breaking, walking around as opposed to pointing the dips down the hill and taking off thing.
All we'll do it, you know, as a bullfighter turn going down.
That's common too. Okay. All right, let's slide forward again. Push heel to shin boot contact. Are your hands up? Are you giving a good visual image? A meaningful visual image? All right. Then, now I would take this from here and kind of got us doing that. Maybe a little bow tie on the kid. Let's twist that ski in the snow. See if the twist it. Pick it off the snow. Twist it.
This is where you'll feel people or see people first fighting the edge of whether the ski's flat or not. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll say, okay, so we talked about the steel and the P-Tex. So when my ski is flat on the P-Tex, it's very maneuverable. It's very maneuverable on the P-Tex. When it's on the steel, it's grippy. It's grippy from side to side. It's slicey in the direction it's pointed. But when it's on the P-Tex, it's a little more maneuverable. So we're going to want to be able to pay attention to whether or not we can keep our ski flat on the snow or flat on the black base.
I have a tip with that too. Like, see how we can make it slide? Yeah. You're never going to tip it. Is it sliding anymore?
Wow, I like that. So when we talk about the order of movement again, here's where our circles really come into play. So we've got the right ski on, and here's another little trick that'll get you everybody to buy into this is you come up the chairlift. How do you get it? You're coming up, or the T-bar. You're coming up the T-bar. You need to step left, match, so you can
With a rope toe.
so you can reinforce this with the T-bar, the chairlift, the rope tow, whatever means of transportation you guys have. All right, so if we spread out and we make a big oval, we can go one right behind the other one. And again, this is a little bit steeper than I'd like to have, but really flat. So you're trying to keep this ski as flat. What's that? For us it is. Flat, 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 turn. Okay, now right here, because it's so steep, and I'm a beginner, I can feel my weight coming back. So that's why it's super critical that this is super flat. So, flat ski forward, flat ski forward, flat ski forward. And this is where you want to go to that. So glide that, glide that, glide that.
And here's where you can give them, I'm going to say, okay, so you go around once and they're stepping and they're kind of scooching and they're doing all sorts of different ways to get around the corner. I'll say, okay, second time around, here's our goal. I want to keep this ski on the snow. I'm not going to pick it up and walk it. So I've got to figure out, remember we tipped our boots to get our boots either flat or on edge. We need to tip our foot so the ski is flat so I can guide the tip around the corner without picking it up. So that teaches them to tip the foot in the direction they're going to flatten the ski or to release the edge. So the goal becomes keep the P-Tex on the snow and don't pick the ski up.
Is that your area right down there? That's where it's that's your flat area? Yep. You should go down there. Okay.
Let's take and make some wedge turns down here. And we're going to make our first wedge turn to the left. Start out, wedge turn to the left. And what I want you to do is I want you to use your right leg to make that left turn. I want you to really use that right leg. Then we're going to turn to the right, and I want you to use your right leg. Then we're going to turn left with the right leg, and right with the right leg, and left with the right. We're only going to use our right leg.
So which one's the right leg?
One opposite the
Oh,
left.
it's uphill if you're facing that way.
One on the sunny side.
All right.
Okay?
So just a wedge, but just using the right leg. So when
we skied 20 years ago. And when we were turning right, is contemporary skiing.
And you guys all were pretty cool about it. You didn't let it get stuck in your head going, what am I doing? You just did it and experienced it.
So, which turn felt like it took less effort? The turn to the left or the turn to the right? Turn to the right.
Yeah, the lazy ski.
And so when we turned to the left, why did we stay in a wedge? What kept us in a wedge? And that passive left ski. It wasn't doing anything. It was just in the way. And we overpowered it and pushed it around the corner. So when we use tip in, tip out activity, and we start to do the wedge change up with tips in, tips out, we can lead right to a first turn being a spontaneous Christie by simply going, if I am here and I steer my tips in, I guide my, I'm going to do tips in, tips out, and then I'm going to only do right tip out. So watch. Tips in. So all I did was take the resistance away on one side, and the wedge that they were skiing in becomes a spontaneous Christie. Right? So it isn't about whether you teach with a wedge or use the wedge or not use the wedge. You teach them movements that allow them to let go of the wedge and move on towards the ground.
Continue on. So we've got the boot lift done, and you guys
did one leg.
And there's good remembering this. The only working on there was the balance, and the key word that we were interested in making sure that our student learned was shin tongue, shin boot, shin boot contact. Keep them in the places, balancing on the balls of the foot, being able to turn a balls of the foot. And then we worked on in our boot sidestepping up the hill. So right here, let's take that same movement that we learned, whether you want to call it kipping to the little toe or kicking up the big toe of the uphill ski. Let's just do that right here with small steps. Remember, your students are going to take big giant steps, they're going to be back.
This is where you're watching that they don't go this one, but they stay on that uphill edge.
So shin boot contact, small steps, big toe up on the uphill ski. Big toe up on the uphill ski. Big toe up on the uphill ski. Right, let's just give some space here. So again, this is the exciting part. You guys already learned you got a really nice balanced stance, you got a nice flex to your ankle, you got a nice flex behind your knee. You can really feel the tongue of that boot, right? So that's the cool stuff. We learn how to step up the hill. Here's the exciting part. We get to ski. So we're going to start moving on our skis. Now there's one thing I want you to remember. When we were doing that flat stuff and we started walking, right to go right, left to go left, we're going to do the same thing. So right here, let's just stand here and pick up the tails of our skis and walk in place. Right, left, right, left, right, left. Pretty cool. So what we're going to do is here, here's where the bullfighter turn comes in. Both bolts over to the side and keep it pretty wide. Take tiny little steps. Right to turn right, 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 right. Okay, we talked about that black stuff on our skis. That P-Tex being the bottom and a flat ski. So right now I'm just going to let myself go down the hill with my ankles flexed and the front of my shin on the top of my boot. And I'm going to go straight down the hill with my arms in front of me. I'm going to just step right, 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 just now. Small little steps. Lisa, step.
And so we certainly do this in both directions. And one of the adaptations you look for, you get an extremely fast day. where the snow's really fast, you might start this out on a 45-degree angle and then just step up to a stop. And then start fanning it down towards the fall line. A little steeper, step up to a stop. You really want to get them established in their mind. And you can say, okay, what do? We skied? What else happened? Someone's going to say, oh, I stopped. Yeah, so we can always step uphill to stop. You want them to know how to stop. That's a big... What's an advantage of doing activities that have them pick up a foot and balance on one foot? What's an advantage? Waiting. Yep. What can you do on two skis that's really hard to do on one ski? Yeah, it's hard to be in the back seat and pick up a foot. You've got to get your hips up on your foot. You've got to stack on that one leg to pick up the foot. So one foot stepping activities really reinforce that.
Everybody on that side right here.
Again, bullfighter turn. This is where it's really critical, the size of the wedge, when you start out, and then you see it's like flat, right? So I'm just going to have this flat, and then I'm going to steer my tip in now. I have an emergency brake.
Use this counter slope?
Yes.
Yeah, because we'd be down below the so they put the skate right like that.
Let's just do a couple of these. Emergency brake, steer the tips in till you stop. Very good.
You guys,
Stepping all the way through the turns at a low angle slope, low speed. You add a little bit of pitch, and practice that a couple times. Add a little bit of pitch. It's amazing how the stepping frequency reduces and the gliding increases.
okay.
You know, I mean, that's what I've done. I mean, Chip, you've been.
Okay, and then that's one thing that I do a lot. And I just did this. I had a girl from France 2 weeks ago.
Germany.
Oh yeah, no, Germany. Well, I had one from France before that.
Wunderbar.
No, guten Nacht, I think is good night. I think. All right. So what I did with her too is I kind of took the stepping approach, and so I did the bullfighter turn, and I went across the hill at a glide and stepped into the turn. So why don't we just give that a try? So, and again, this is on shallower terrain than what we're going to experience. Okay, so we would just glide on the P-Tex. Step till we stop. Come on down.
when we ski, whether we're a beginner or an expert, we're ultimately looking to control how the ski interfaces with the snow.
Yep.
And using that reference, helps people who never really thought about how does this tool work and how am I making the tool work or not work. We can think about in contemporary skiing, the inside leg is an enabler or an inhibitor, and there ain't no in between.
How about the lift and tip through the turn? Chris,
Well, sometimes you can set up one turn across the hill and just do like one single railroad turn in slow motion. And that is a big aha for a lot of people, for me at least. Especially if you can kind of control it, make it feel safe. It's just small, and then you can garland it across the hill. And I've had a lot of. Oh, you just. Well, we talk about boot work, and we talk about it's easier just to lift that inside ski and everything follows. Your angles will match that way. And I just tell them we're going to count to 3, and we're going to. Yep, and we're just going to tip, or we're just going to try to see how far we can lift this edge up. And it's just one turn, and it usually really helps make a connection to.
so if we turn around and look at the tracks in the snow, pretty cool. They were pretty even on both skis. So just by telling them to tip the uphill ski up the hill, or tip the foot up the hill, the other one came along with it, and we got nice, clean tracks.
Edge control is the ability to move from slipping and gripping and back and forth. It's not being just gripping or just slipping, but it's the ability to move and transition back and forth between those and moderate how much grip we have or how much slip we have. And here to me, it's the shape skis edge so easily. It's the releasing of them is where we learn to make our parallel turns and make our releasing movements. Okay.
When I'm teaching, I kind of think about being a pilot and going through a checklist. So when I'm going to do my demo, I go, okay, do I have my ankles flexed or my knees over my toes? So before I start out, I have my hands up and I have my ankles flexed. So that puts me in the right frame right before I start.
Okay, we're going to use our, we would do this on flatter terrain, disclaimer again.
Yes, flatter terrain.
But if you think of the releasing that we got when we edged and the released, and then also when I did that shuffle turn, one of the things you do is you can play with the timing of the movement. So I'm going to start out and I'm going to shuffle, shuffle, shuffle to the right, and then I'm going to shuffle, tip my feet and shuffle to the left and shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And then I'm going to go from shuffle, shuffle, shuffle to shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And if you can hear me, you'll see the difference. All right, so I'm going to start out with quicker shuffles, and then I'm going to lengthen them. But when you can get a student to say out loud what they're supposed to be doing, there's part of, how many of you guys know what VAK stands for? Visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. When you can engage more than one of those components in the learning process, the learning magnifies. So when I have an auditory, I'm saying shuffle, I'll be aware if my feet aren't doing it. Okay, so here we go. So shuffle, 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 shuffle until I stop, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle to a stop. So playing with timing is one of the things we can change in a movement that gets a different result. We talk about the acronym DIRT, the duration of a movement, the intensity of a movement, the rate of the movement, how quick it is, and the timing of a movement. So changing any of those components or several of them gives us a different blend and a different outcome. So I like to say, if you want to change your skiing, change your dirt. Okay. So this can, and we have enough pitch here that we can play with this. So this shuffle can go from an emphasis on the shuffling. And so to shuffle your skis, were you more on the P-Tex or more on the steel? More on the P-Tex. So shuffling is a releasing side of the spectrum, and tipping is an edging side, or steel grippy side of the spectrum, but we can mix the two together. I can go shuffle, shuffle as I change, from left to right, and then I can go tip, tip, shuffle, shuffle to change from right to left, and then go tip, tip. So that's what I'm going to do down here. I'm going to switch from shuffling, which is releasing, to tipping, which is engaging, and then shuffling, which is releasing, to tipping, which is engaging. Okay? You know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to hold your ski tip, and what I want you to do is tip your foot inside the boot, just softly, just the foot inside the boot. And I want you to tip it towards the uphill leg. Yeah, softly, you can way softer, softer, then stronger, stronger, stronger. Feel the leg respond. Okay, start with the foot, more, feel the leg respond. Okay, so all we did was increase the intensity with which we tip the foot. Our intent to tip that foot stronger fired up the kinetic chain, and the body genius started recruiting bigger muscles, going, well, he needs some help. So I'm throwing in the bigger muscles up the leg, all the way up into the core, until we got the effect we wanted. But if our intent is strong enough with the foot, then the body genius can handle the details. We didn't have to think about powering up the leg. All we had to do was think about tipping the foot. So that's what we want to focus on, okay? We're going to shuffle to change direction, and then tip, tip. Shuffle to change direction, tip, tip, okay? So shuffle, shuffle, tip. Shuffle, 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 tip. Tip. Shuffle, 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 tip. Tip, 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 tip. Now, this is just an example of a way that we can get people turning. I always, and when I did the shuffles up above and I started the quick ones, that kept me more in the fall line. So first turns are always easier when we're more in the fall line and we don't have to challenge that big edge release. But then as we started shuffling longer, then we had to really apply that releasing, releasing, releasing. Side slipping exercises are something if you have a student that's not getting the release going, and or they tend to move the feet independently and they're very 1-2. Getting them to release both edges and slide, have both skis sliding at the same time is kind of a feeling that a lot of skiers don't have, especially skiers who skied in a wedge and that kind of thing. They're always on opposing edges as opposed to being on corresponding edges. So when you can start to get them like you mentioned, Chip, doing a traverse, that's corresponding edges. That's parallel. Side slipping is parallel. The forward side slip, traverse, forward slide slip. That's parallel activities. So you start to increase their experience time in more parallel activities. That way when they start giving up the wedge, they're not going someplace unfamiliar, they're going someplace where you've built a familiarity for them so that they feel comfortable. Oh, I can do this, I can slide on both edges. Okay, you don't want them to have to figure that out the first time it happens in the middle of a turn. Okay. When you got kids and you say, how many of you skate? You guys, and how do you stop on your skates? Can you show me how you do that on skis? As soon as one does it, you get that critical mass throughout the group and poof, all of them can do it, So a hockey stock is a great tool to break them into that, that mode. Okay, now let's do a soft hockey stop. Well, let's not completely stop, and before we stop, let's go the other way. Suddenly you got linked turns with a lot of rotary. Well, now you can add, let's go up and do that. And then we'll interject and build some tipping into it and see what we get. So a hockey stop is a bit of a ballistic move. It's a chunky move. It's chunky. But when we start to make a hockey stop a little bit softer, now we're starting to refine it. And when we let the hockey stop drift and release into another turn, now we're starting to apply it a little bit. So we're taking that big chunky movement and we're starting to refine it and apply it a little bit to actually linking some turns. So let's kind of just ski a progression here where we start out with some chunkier hockey stops where we almost stop and then harder edge sets and then start softening the edge set and let the hockey stop drift a little bit and then drift it and release the tips down the hill. And then so we start to get a little bit of rhythm, but become very aware of going up on the steel and off onto the P-Tex and turning the skis up onto the steel. How could you cadence this or use something verbal? And I mentioned that you can go, softer, softer, softer. That conveys an image and a feeling, and yet you can cadence it without going 1, 2, 3, which gets you a little out of the rhythm. Okay, and it, that 1, 2, 3 works for music, but it never worked for me in skiing too well. So,
Slide fast, stop slow.
yeah, slip fast.
You can do the softer, 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 help extend the sliding
Yeah,
as opposed to the hard stop.
yeah. We start out going edge, and then we go edge. Okay.
So we're doing that now.
No, that's what we did here. That's what.
No, what are we doing now?
It's back to you.
I think we can take this right into blending into like an open parallel and round these turns out. So a little bit wider stance for chip, but that was much better up here. And just drift into the fall line and think 2 edges, 4, 4, 4. So from
Okay.
this being softer, now we're going to where we can get 2, 4, 4, 4.
Okay, and let's draw out that. Let's say that out loud. I'm on 4 edges. I'm on 4 edges. I'm on 4 edges. So if we look at a turn, 4 edges is going to last somewhere from here down to here. Yep. We're going to really stay on 4 edges, and the 2 is going to come because we've turned across the slope, and the slope builds in the edging. When we edge on top of that, we can sometimes get too much. Okay, all right. Two, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. We sometimes call these patience turns because you have to be patient. As opposed to you're patient because your skiing is ill. Okay, go ahead, Dave. That's not Dave. No, he's not Dave. What is his name? Chris, that's right.
So when you think about this little progression that we took, and you've got your really athletic kid that's a skater, and he can do those hockey stop, and then soften, 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 to almost like the drifted turn as we came, you can see how the release movement happens and is easier as we soften that without even telling it. So when you think about how kids learn, and you take one sport like the hockey, so you've gone from the hockey stop and you've blended it into the skiing. So you're teaching for transfer because you've already taken something that they already know and now are adding it to the new sport. How do we get people to turn on the learning? So we all came out here, and I thought this was a really engaging group. You guys did a great job, and it was very cohesive. So how does that happen? How do we get people to be engaged and turn on the learning?
Well, it's got to be fun.
You got to keep it fun.
It absolutely has to be fun. It has to be moving. Not, for most folks, not static, but it's got to be moving. It's got to be fun.
What about pairing kids up? Because now you've got kids that can do this, and you can say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. You go in front of me, I'm going to watch you, then let's switch and have them watch me. So you get them engaged, you get them interacting with each other, and it's still fun. So kind of be thinking along the way of how do I turn on the learning for whatever level of group of people that I have and keeping that engaged?
We did a number of things today that required us to pay attention and feel what was happening and pay attention to what the ski was doing in the snow or how we moved a part of our body. Those kind of activities increase kinesthetic awareness, and that is a key to learning. When I did that activity that where we just made the turns with the right leg, remember those? You guys all felt the big difference between the left turn and the right turn. A cornerstone of learning is the body's ability to perceive contrast or change. And so that's what I call a contrasting exercise. It creates such a contrast that you go, whoa, this is really different when I do it this way versus that way. So think about how you set things up for your students when you can create contrast between the way that, even if, say they're coming down and they're doing, you mentioned Z-turners, right? So you do things with them and you get them making a round or C-turn, and then you say, okay, on this run, I want you to start out and make 2 of the severest Z-turns you can, and then switch to a round or C-turn. Now what you've done is you've kind of booby-trapped their habits. And every Z-turn they make after that, they'll go, oh, that's my Z-turn. You know, and they'll feel the difference and they'll want to change. Now they choose, and they choose, do I want the old or do I want the new? Right. So.
Okay, so we kind of had a goal here this morning, or when we came out, and it was, what was our goal?
Was to learn to have a great lesson.
A great beginner lesson.
Great beginner lesson.
Okay, and components of the great beginner lesson start with what? Customer service.
Don't forget the pickle.
Don't forget the pickle. So, and by the way, Indian Head lent us that. So if you guys are ever over skiing at Indian Head, say thanks for lending us that video. So customer service. Then what we did throughout the entire day was we captured the teaching model in little increments. So we had the goals, and you guys all skied to the goals. And we talked about the learning process, and we explained it. And we had these little mini goals all the way. And then our outcome was the big picture of the great beginner lesson. So we all had our aha moments. Let's just go around and say what those were again, so we remember them and we can take them and share them with someone else.
Initiating the turn by relaxing, sliding the uphill.
Sliding, turning that uphill
Yeah.
ski in the wedge, that was the...
Yeah, relax. When we did the just turning right and left, but initiating with the right.
Right leg only.
Yep.
Okay. Which got us to feel the
Yeah.
what the inside leg could do for us,
Right.
as opposed to just the outside.
Right. That was just a huge shift because, like I said, I've been working on curve, and
And
that
still
leads
can,
to a
just-
very narrow approach to skiing.
You still can, you just got to change
Yeah.
which leg you're starting with. That was one, there were several for me. That was
Yeah.
one, the steel plastic we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That was just such an obvious, non-threatening way to introduce the ski and the motions that we expect from the ski as we go down the hill and through different things. The piles of snow that we did down there.
Oh, the snowballs.
The snowballs. That was just such a nice little demonstration on steering your skis and finishing off. And that's something that we can throw into just about every single lesson.
And that's
I've
a
got more,
visual cue for the student. Oh, I'm at the
Exactly.
snowball. I better be doing something.
Exactly.
And not just a snowball, but I sometimes carry a little backpack full of
Stuff.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
Like when I do my boot work with kids, I'll have these little dinosaurs, because kids love dinosaurs. And we have to tiptoe through the dinosaur part because you don't want to wake them up because they'll get really mad and they'll bite you. So we tiptoe through that. And then we shuffle quietly through that. And then when they get quiet, they get lower and they flex their ankles and they flex their knees. And then you step really quiet through it and you just keep building, building, building. And then another thing I carry with me are tennis balls cut in half. You can build a little course anywhere so you can keep kids moving around through courses. And then I have these other little cones that I'll set up along the way. what else? I'm trying to remember. I have to get out my bag of tricks again. So there's, just use your imagination. I mean, if you hang out with kids, they'll tell you what they like.
So Chris, what are you taking away?
Lots of stuff. I think your DIRT acronym
Oh,
was
okay.
very effective.
Yeah.
I think that changing
Which
duration,
that stand for?
Duration, intensity, rate, and timing.
You got it.
Yeah. But by changing, especially with your shuffle technique, by slowing that down, you can actually get right into a parallel turn without even thinking about it, and then you can use it with a lot of other things. That was pretty cool. I did dig the one leg turn from the wedge to show the old style versus new style. I think that'll be really effective. I liked your visual cues, as Dan had said, with the snowballs. Overall, it was a good lesson. The shuffle, tip. I've never done that before, so that was a good drill.
That was a good drill.
I think overall I've got a lot in my bag of tricks to work with.
Do it up there.
And one of that is it gets a student to think about, what am I trying to get my skis to, how am I trying to get them to interact with the snow? Am I trying to create more edge, or am I trying to create less edge at this point in time? Okay.
Chip, what was a moment for you?
Well, some of my moments will have, but the way I always do it, for my students, is, what'd you learn today? And if someone says what, you have to say something new, right? So I got to say something new, right?
Oh,
Oh, well, good.
Because that's what I challenge my students with, right? Somebody already said it, then you got to come up. Because of course you've always taught somebody a lot of things, right? I learned a lot of things today. But one thing I hadn't mentioned yet is I actually hate the wedge, but if I have to use it, I have the tool of instead of pushing your tails out, bring the tips in.
Steer the
and
tips
then
in.
and
tips
then one
rather
tip
than
out,
the
and you
tails,
got
right?
you got to turn.
That was a good one. That was very good.
An emergency brake.
And there were many more
like that.
besides that.
Okay, well, great.
You guys did a great job.
Jeannie, do you have anything you want to add?
I was gonna say I'm last, so it's hard to not
Any
repeat.
new ones, right?
I got to repeat, but I got to tell you, when I was demoed, because I went first on the turn in a wedge with your, when we were turning
Oh,
away.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm going down the hill going, I can't. It doesn't work. I'm going, this is not working. I can't wedge.
And it was a great demo.
So what do we call that teaching style? How I set that up? What do we call that? That's called guided discovery.
Great. Okay. Yeah.
So I guided you into an activity from which you discovered a result that wasn't dependent upon what I said or what I told you. You got it from your
So I'm like, I
experience.
can't wait.